Howdy folks, Windy City Thetan Watch. I know that most of you are going to be already over on Nance Drew's channel. I did speak on that channel for a little bit. I'm just walking back towards the city center real quick and thought I'd give you just a brief update of what we had in court here today. So I'm not speaking for Nancy, I'm just telling you what I saw in court today. That anything that has to do with the legal cases or anything else, you'll have to get that from Nance. But I was in court today, definitely to support Nance Drew and also to be an eyewitness and try to be a journalist in regards to what went on. So as we got to the court today, you know, I was there maybe 10 minutes early. Nance Drew had already been there. We had Juanita was there. Nance's partner was there. And once I got into the courtroom, we met another, howdy everybody. And I'm gonna kind of, I'm not gonna watch the chat right now. I'm gonna scroll back up and watch the chat so I can kind of go through what I'm thinking about now. But if you have questions, absolutely ask the questions for that. But Style Audit 1A was also here today showing support. So thanks to her as well. We went in and Nance's attorney was a little bit late. He was stuck in traffic. There were several cases called first. Something that I thought was very strange about some of these early cases is that a lot of complaining witnesses were not there, and a couple of defendants were not there, so there were bench warrants issued in those situations. Looking around the courtroom, I was looking for Joe Cecala and I was looking for Chadwicke Burke. Neither one of them was there. Additionally, Officer Officer Karma, who is the arresting officer, he was not in court today either. So it gets to be about 9:09. Remember, court started at 9 o'clock. At 9:09, Joe Cecala Jr., now remember, that's the father of the executive director of Chicago.org, and he's also a lawyer, the founder of Dream Exchange, and he's been kind of a friend of the court. So he hasn't filed appearances in this situation. He is just being a friend of the court, talking to the state's attorney in these scenarios. So at about 9:09, he peeks in, looks around, leaves again, and this repeats 3 or 4 times. So he comes into the courtroom, kind of peeks around, and then he leaves again. Eventually, Nance gets called up. The state's attorney calls for Chadwicke Burke, the complaining witness. No response. The state's attorney said, "Can we continue this?" The judge said, "F no," which, by the way, the judge did not say F no, but the judge said, "Nope, dismissed." So similar to the very first appearance that we saw, this would have been the traditional, hey, it's been dismissed, but they've got 160 days. Now, I don't know if it's 160 days from now again, or if it's 160 days from that first element. But the other one that I thought was interesting that I didn't hear before is it's actually or until the statute of limitations is up. And I'm going to have to look that up. But I believe that the statute of limitations on assault is actually fairly lengthy. Right? I think that you can file that complaint quite a bit into the future. But be that as it may, dismissed. So seems like all things are pleasant, other than the fact that, right, they can refile anytime they want to. Well, at this point, we all head out to the lobby, and Joe Cecala was not in the courtroom when Nance was called forward. So he doesn't know what's really happened here yet. Nance and I and Nance's partner are talking with a reporter from the Sun-Times, and the attorney walks in. So Nance's attorney walks in. Now, something that I'm going to say that I was very disappointed with from the attorney is that Joe Cecala saw the attorney and said, "Hey, Pat," and waved him over. And Pat went over and talked to Joe Cecala Jr. before talking to the client. I think that's a bit of a misstep, right? That at least ethically, it sounds suspect for that to occur, right? So at this point, we talked to the lawyer again, and the lawyer, yeah, they can refile, right? And again, the 160 or the statute of limitations. But they end up going, everybody goes back inside, and I think this is at Nance's direction, or at least Nance answered in the affirmative to this desire. Hey, do you want to get the court date set or not? And so the attorneys went back in and said, yeah, let's go get these court dates set. Before they go in there and talk to anybody, Joe Cecala again talks to the state's attorney privately. And by the way, he's just a civilian at that point in time. He's allowed to, I didn't realize this at the time, but I could have gone up and talked to the state's attorney just the same as they were talking to the state's attorney. So Joe Cecala and the state's attorney, they share phone numbers and they share email addresses. Because I don't think that Joe Cecala has done much work with this particular state's attorney. And remember, the state's attorneys kind of rotate through in this process. So it's not always the same state's attorney, doesn't stay attached to the particular case. And when it was refiled, I'm sure that it gets reshuffled to who wants the next case. But regardless, Joe Cecala is again butting in, saying, hey, we want to get this reset for date. And again, he's just a civilian in this situation. He doesn't have a dog in the fight, minus the fact that we know why he's trying to get this, but he's not representing anybody in this court case. They start mentioning dates, and September comes out, and okay, that's interesting. And then Joe Cecala walks away from the pit where the attorneys stand to talk to the judge. And as he walks back, he gives a very intent stare to myself as well as Nance's partner. Now, Nance is not in the courtroom at this point in time. Nance is out talking to her lawyer. He stares intently at us, and Nance's partner is talking to me and notices over the shoulder that Cecala is still staring at her. And so she waves. And then Cecala says, are you threatening me? I'll get the sheriff in here right now. And then I turned around and said, did you just threaten me with the sheriff? Because I wasn't a part of that party. And I'm telling you that what occurred here is that he gives us an intent stare. He continues to stare. She waves. Just a nice general gesture of, hi, how are you doing? He goes out, Joe Cecala goes out to talk to the sheriff. The sheriff is kind of listening to him. I walk out there because I don't want this happening in shadows. So I walk out there, and all of a sudden they kind of huddle up, right? They close ranks and talk much more quietly to one another in regards to what's going on. And I don't think Joe's getting any satisfaction from the sheriffs. So it eventually comes to the point where they just break down into just a social conversation. And they talk, for 10, 15 minutes. There's two sheriffs and Joe Cecala. And hey, how are the kids? How's the family? What have you been up to? Got any big plans this summer? Right? Just social kibitzing in regards to what's going on here. And thank you very much, Boxing for Life. I'll come back to that very quickly. And thank you for that. Eventually, Joe Cecala leaves the courtroom, leaves the lobby. So he leaves the courthouse. And as he leaves, the sheriff waves to him. And I asked Mr. Cecala if he felt threatened by the sheriff's wave. There was no response. So, and I'm sure the sheriff wasn't going to arrest himself in that same situation. So, at this point, I kind of want to watch what Cecala is doing. Cecala eventually leaves, and I think you're going to see this on Nance's Live because Juanita was out front filming that he eventually walks around the car, or walks around the corner, gets in his car, and leaves. Now, when he did try to leave, he started driving northbound on Kedzie, and he would have had to drive past Juanita with her camera, and he actually stopped the car and backed it up and turned around the other direction. mostly not to be seen on camera, but I'm sure it's to protect the license plate and all that kind of fun stuff in that space. So now Cecala has left the courthouse. I go back into the courtroom, and the Sun-Times person, the Sun-Times reporter, Nance, the lawyer, Nance's partner, are sitting there and they're having a conversation. And I finally realized that what has occurred is they have gotten it to the point where they are going to call the court case today, right? So they do, the lawyers have agreed that, yes, we're all here, let's call the court case. And the reason for this is that they want to get the trial set and they want to be able to put discovery on the calendar, right? So that ends up happening. I go outside and talk to Juanita to kind of update everybody on what's happened at that point in time on Nance's channel. And then they come out, and what it comes down to is that on August 5th, there will be another court date. But it was set for, the discovery was set, and the trial date was set at that point in time. So that's where we are right now. No Chadwicke, right? There definitely wasn't a Chadwicke. What else was interesting in there today? I think that's mostly what occurred there today. So I'll ask you all what other questions you might have, but I'm also then now, while you guys are thinking of questions that I may or may not know the answer to, let me scroll back up here. And again, I want to, first of all, acknowledge, hey, Boxing for Life, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's incredibly generous of you. All of the money goes back to equipment, bus fare, train fare, car rides, everything of that nature. So thank you so much for your generous gift. Let's go back a little bit. Sorry, it's pretty sunny out here, so see if we can find some. Okay, so I'm up at the top. Yeah, yep. Thanks, LA and Toronto. Definitely, I want to be there just for the moral support, one thing, but also, you know, I definitely stand on the opposite side of Scientology in these spaces, and I think it's a childish lawsuit that they're attempting to go after, or civil suit that they're trying to go after here. Yeah, so there's the, you know, safe pointing. I 100% thought that, well, there's two things that I would say classify themselves as safe pointing in this scenario. When Joe Cecala talks to the state's attorney, he cries for the church, right? These damn protesters, they're out there, they're religious bigots, they're protesting our church every day. And had I known that I'm allowed to go and talk to this guy as well, now he doesn't have to listen to me, but I can go talk to the state attorney as well and say, yeah, we don't believe in child trafficking. We don't believe in human trafficking. We don't like elder abuse. We don't like child abuse. We don't like financial fraud. My understanding is that most of the prosecutorial and executive powers in the country are also against those things. So my expectation is you stand with us and you would want to protest these things just the same. So, but again, I now know something that I didn't know earlier. And that was that I can go and talk to the state's attorney just as well as anybody else. He doesn't have to entertain me, but I can talk to him. And sorry, I'm not keeping the camera in frame. Yeah, thanks, Twyla. And this is, I'm going to go with, great, that's Illinois, and it might also be Cook County. It might also be Chicago as well. Yeah. But I don't think that this now applies anymore because the court or the trial date was set. Right. I'm going to turn the camera on for just 1 second. And if you guys are Chicagoans, actually, I think it's a national brand, but if you're Chicagoans, you'll definitely recognize this. If you can see the writing on the bottom of this pedestrian bridge that's linking these two factories together, it says John M. Smith. Right? So John M. Smith is a furniture company here in Chicago, and they've got some very funny commercials. John M. Smith has 3 sons, and now those 3 sons have, I think all of them have daughters. So they do an awful lot of hijinks in their commercials. All right, let's get you guys turned back around here. Let me focus back on front camera. Yeah, my expectation is that we should be able to, and again, my expectation is that it costs money to do this, so we have to figure out, and I'm sorry, when I'm saying we in the most royal element possible, I have nothing to do with with this case. But yeah, there should be this idea that they can subpoena. Usually subpoenaing is not free, so I don't know what the financial outlay for that is. I'm going to say, and I've kind of talked about this a couple of times. By the way, I am not slapping anybody on the wrist right now. I don't want anybody to feel like, oh, Paul's being punitive and penalizing. My advice to Nance and everybody else is there's a problem at hand. Get yourself out from underneath this problem and then think about what those next steps are. But if you think about it, you're under the gun right now in regards to what's going on here. So it's better to keep your focus on one thing. And this is my opinion. Now, do I think, I absolutely think she should, but it's not my call. I would say that, she's not happy about the way that she's being treated. So if that's any indication, I would not be surprised if something like that happens. But you're right. After everything plays out, I think is the right time for that to occur. Thanks, Twyla. Yeah, 100%. That I do not see Scientology or Chadwicke taking this all the way to the end of getting a judicial verdict. Right? This is going to settle or be dropped eventually, but not after causing the max pain. Right? So let's make sure that we're continuing to support Nance in this regard. But the church is probably more interested in the idea of extracting pain. Something that I did not mention earlier, and I think is incredibly important. Because now this is set for trial, Nance can no longer be near 650 South Clark. So she is prohibited from being near 650 South Clark. What didn't come out there, so it sounds like a TRO, but what didn't come out there was, what does close mean? In the same state, in the same country, on the same block, within 10 feet? What does close to the organization mean in this regard? So that is another thing that she'll have to deal with right now. So we'll probably see her from her studio more, or we'll see if we can find the encampment where Scientology goes, so if you're away from the church. Now, what I find very puzzling about that particular restriction is that Nance is not accused of assaulting a building. She's accused of assaulting a person. So I understand the idea that you might want to keep the two people separated, but that doesn't make any sense as to why the person in the building need to be separated. So this sounds like BS to me. Yeah, Anita Nook's right that, yeah, Cecal did say that that there was some intimidation going on in the courtroom because he doesn't like when people wave at them. Yeah, Lady Jane, I'm gonna go past that. I just don't like giving oxygen to people who want to tear down um, the anti-Scientology movement. I appreciate the comment, but let's see what else we've got here. Oh, so this is somewhat interesting. I think that this is upon agreement of the state's attorney and Nance's attorney, that they have every right to um, create an agreement after the judge has made his ruling. So in reality, they just expedited the refiling. But instead of this continually being a let's refile, let's dismiss, let's refile, let's dismiss, this kind of sets a timer on things. Yeah, on this one, I don't think that they were as nefarious because, like as I just mentioned, I think that Nance and her attorney talked and said, "Hey, here's some options," and it was Nance's decision. So Nance knew that this was going to happen. I will 100% agree that that last court hearing that was put on the docket without notifications, that was to try to figure out a way that Nance wouldn't know. But Nance would have absolutely known this because it was her attorney who probably made the request of the state's attorney. So max pain is a poker term, but it's also it's an everything else term as well. In poker, if you're in the middle of the hand, you can say, "Hey, do you want to run this once, run it twice?" And when somebody says max pain, it's like just run it once. We either celebrate or we die, right? Howdy, Perth. Good to see you. And sorry, I'm jiggling the phone as I do this. I've got it on the gimbal, but in order for me to scroll, not really seeing that much. You're also getting a little bit of Windy Wanders the City, except usually I've got the camera facing the other way on this process. Yeah, so LA in Toronto, that ruling about the idea that she has to stay away from 650 South Clark, I was not in the courtroom when that happened, but I also asked her, I said, did they give you a distance? And she said no. So I'm sure there'll be additional paperwork that comes out on that, that when her attorney gets the actual ruling or finding of the day, the court records will most likely have a distance attached to it. You know, I kind of thought the same thing, but since that's not a residential building, it can't be that. Now, he does probably technically work there or has in the past worked there. So as a place of work, it could be protected. The What I would try to do, again, not me, and I don't even know how you do this, but I would challenge does he still work there? And if he doesn't still work there, then why am I being barred from that location? Howdy, L. Ron Lyer. Great to see you. L. Ron does a lot of great work down there in St. Louis. He had a bit of a road trip this past weekend, and I loved what Free Xenu, Xenu News, KC, and Scientology Audit. They went to an event where Scientology was trying to hand out flyers, and they collected over 100, right around 100 pieces of propaganda. So that was awesome. So I'll do a quick recap here for Lady E. Now, some of you already heard it, and you know, I assume that Nance is still live, and there's probably 1,000 people going live right now. Here's kind of the recap of the day. We all showed up in court. Juanita was there, I was there, Nance's partner was there, and an auditor that we know was also there. Darn it, audit 1A, Scientology audit 1A, was there as well. We went in. Her case was not first this time. There were a couple of public defender cases that went on first. Eventually, her case was called. Joe Cecala Jr., remember, he's the father of the executive director, Chicago. He kept on poking his head in the door, but he didn't get there until 10 after. Excuse me. When Nance was first called, Chadwicke wasn't there, so they dismissed the case. Eventually, Nance's lawyer showed up. He wasn't there at the start. He was stuck in traffic. When Nance's lawyer showed up, they went and talked to the state's attorney, and they had the call reset for the day, and they wanted to get the trial set. So they were able to get the trial reset, or the call reset, and the outcome of that was that there will be a trial, and I'm sure that the next conference is scheduled for August 5th. Style 1A audit, or Style Audit 1A. Thank you so much. So at this point, Nance does have a court date. I believe that means that subpoenas and discovery can start taking place. The other element of this is that Nance must stay away from 650 South Clark. It is unclear by what distance she needs to stay away from 650 South Clark. Yeah, this does make sense, but again, I'm going to say that usually those are the human can't come in contact with the human, not a human can't come in contact with an address. Now I'll say that the what would be different there is if it was a residential address, right? So, but all right. Any other questions? Anything that I might not have talked about? Want to remind everybody that we've got we've got a video out there on Officer or Sergeant Dolan of the Chicago Police, showing 3 different times where he's worked at the behest of Scientology. I did have a comment on that hey, he might have been hired by Scientology, and what I'm pretty sure the person meant was you can hire police as private security. But the one thing I want to remind everybody about, in those 3 instances, he was on a call. So he had been called out to the organization via a 911 or a dispatched call. So he was not a private contractor for Scientology when he picked up the signs, when he went over the PA system to tell Free Xenu Project that he had to clean up the sidewalk, when he went into the organization, got a bucket of water, and came out and threw water on the sidewalk. So just a reminder that was what occurred there. I also want to say, hey, call to action, folks. If you want to help the cause, please show up at organizations. Again, I want to say we appreciate everybody who watches and stays tuned. Right? It's it gives us the dopamine hit that people are watching us, and that's great that we get that. It'd be so advantageous if more people could actually show up. And again, I'm not saying sacrifice anything, or but if you're near an org and it's possible to come out and protest, please do protest. Right? If you want any tips, any suggestions, you want to ask questions, please email me. I'm very easy to get a hold of. I tend to respond very quickly, unless you're a troll trying to get my goad. And then, by the way, I actually do respond to those, but then I throw them away immediately. So I write up the response. I feel better about it, and you get no satisfaction. Style audit 1A definitely wants to come out. You know, she says, hey, she feels a little bit uncomfortable if she's the only one out there. So I want to be able to help that. Yes. So I filed several complaints. I'm pretty sure that Nance has filed several complaints. Free Zeno has filed complaints. And I'll say even the our Scientology auditors who are no longer auditing or protesting have filed complaints. So we have done whatever we can to make sure that we're filling up his jacket. One thing that Nance let me know is that when you call the Chicago Police Department, they will tell you that Officer Sergeant Dolan is currently under investigation. So there's an internal investigation going on currently for him. Folks, I'm going to turn the camera around because it lets me bring the camera or the text closer to me, and I can shorten my gimbal. So when I'm backwards on the camera, I've got to stick the gimbal out there a little ways. All right, let me see if I've got the shade here for a second. Thanks for subscribing over to 1A. It's 11:12, so I assume that we can all go watch Natalie real quick. So if there's any mods in, if oh, 100%. Hello, Xenu Free. Happy birthday. Congratulations on another lap around the sun. Hope you have many more. All right, folks, let's all head over to Natalie's. Let her know I sent you, and I will meet you over there. Thank you all. Appreciate everybody being here. Make sure you're subscribing, like, share this whenever you can. Talk to everybody later. Bye-bye.